welcome to the Quincy Access Television Studios. I'm Mark Crosby. Thank you for joining us for another episode of For Your Health, a program that basically helps you to remain healthy. Today's topic is staying safe in the winter. And as in programs before, we have Caitlin Pico, who is a health nurse here in the city of Quincy. Caitlin, welcome back.
Thank you. As always, thank you for having me.
Great to have you. This topic we kind of discussed, you and I, as a possible inclusion in the series, because there's a lot about the winter and there's a lot of safety aspects of the winter that folks should be aware about.
Yes, and a lot of it's kind of, you would say, common sense over the years, especially if you're a homeowner, you know a lot of this, but it's always good to recap.
Absolutely. Sometimes common sense escapes us all, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So let's start with an outline, because I think it'd be beneficial to the folks at home. So this is for you. We will be talking about preparing for a winter storm, steps to take before the storm hits, staying safe during the storm, safety outdoors, preventing hypothermia, and preventing frostbite. So that's what folks can expect. Let's talk about, let's start at the beginning and talk about maybe preparing for a winter storm.
Yeah, so all of this information I actually got right off the CDC website. It's the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. So if anybody wanted more clarification, that's all there. But their first step was to make a plan. This is also known as a communication and disaster plan. It can be used for other natural disasters as well, but I think it's important to communicate for yourself and your family at home. And this involves getting emergency equipment, whether it's medication, personal needs, especially now in this pandemic, like making sure you have enough masks if you do need to leave the home during a storm. And this also puts together like a list of who you would need to contact. So say it would be a family member, a neighbor, or even first responders, depending on the situation at hand.
And we're going to now talk about kind of preparing your home.
Yes, and there are multiple different things you should be doing. So the first that they have is weatherproof your home. This includes insulating water pipes that run along the exterior walls to help prevent the water from freezing during extreme cold. You want to ensure that the walls and attic are properly insulated to help maintain the warmth within the home. And then also repairing roof leaks and even any tree branches that are hanging over your home. You kind of want to address those before a storm hits, because if a tree branch comes on to your home during a storm, it can really create a risk for you.
Absolutely. Power can go out, and
Yes.
then of course health hazards as a result of loss of power.
Yes.
We were talking about that. I think I was talking about that earlier today with my executive director, that it seems like in this region now we see a lot more wind, a lot more storms that have wind components to them that will take down trees and branches.
It's amazing, yeah, bringing up sidewalks and everything. So
Absolutely.
It's really important to do that. Another step you want to do is make sure you're getting your chimney and flue inspected annually. Definitely make sure you're doing this prior to starting a fire, because of course if your chimney's not clean, that could be a huge risk, cause a fire in your home, or even have gas build up in the home. So you want to make sure those are clean. The CDC did recommend that if you don't know an inspector to come, you can call your local fire department and they may have recommendations. And then next, which is really important with those fires in the home, you want to make sure you have an active smoke detector and carbon monoxide detectors. And you want to make sure that you're testing these devices monthly and replacing the batteries at least twice a year. You want to make sure you have an active fire extinguisher in your home as well. And then it also is important that if you have any fuel burning equipment, like a gas stove or anything, you want to make sure that it's vented outdoors, because the carbon monoxide can build up in your home and obviously lead to death in some situations.
Right, and a lot of folks use generators during power outages. Again, those have to be kept clear. And a lot of folks don't realize, okay, they may have vents for the furnace, let's say,
Yeah.
but snow can pile up against those vents, and unless those are clear, that will force all of that poisonous gas into your home.
Yes, so you really want to make sure you're checking for that. And another thing you could do is annually have your furnace system and your vents checked by a technician just to ensure that there is no buildup and it is venting properly.
Keep an easy-to-read thermometer inside your home.
Yes, and according to the CDC, this is more for older adults. You want to make sure that this thermometer is in an easy, accessible location that you come across throughout the day. And the reason for this is because with increased age, health-related concerns with cold heat increase, because as you age, your ability to kind of feel the change in temperature can decrease.
And obviously it goes without saying that if you become extremely cold, you're not thinking straight.
Yes, and we will go through that later on when we get to hypothermia.
Emergency car kits.
Yeah, so this is very important. Of course, in a major storm, you want to try to stay off the roads as best as possible, but we do know people have to get to work, people have to travel in emergency situations. So some good things that you should keep in your car would be your cell phone with an extra portable charger. You want to have extra items to stay warm, including blankets, extra clothes, a windshield scraper. Water and snacks is very important, just in case you got stuck on the road. I know on the news they had a whole highway, people were stuck overnight, so you want to make sure you're prepared. You want to bring a shovel and salt, or if you don't have salt, you can bring cat litter, just in case there was ice by your wheels. First aid kit, that includes bringing necessary medications if you have any. Flashlight and batteries, hazard reflectors, or a bright colored flag just in case you went off the road and you needed to be seen. Of course, it's going to be a cloud of white, so bring something bright. And then the last that they had was road maps, especially if you're traveling in an unknown area. And that's important because we're so reliant on cell phones these days that if a cell phone dies, you might not know your way home.
Absolutely, good
So
point.
it's good to keep with you.
So for me, it's the old days of reading maps, but those never they never go out. They're always useful.
Yes.
And of course, if you have no cell service,
It's helpful,
then
yeah.
absolutely it's necessary. Now we're going to kind of back up and talk about steps to take before the storm hits.
Yeah, so this is kind of similar, but you want to make sure you're monitoring the weather forecast, of course. Check your supplies at home. This includes food, water, again, your medical supplies, winter gear to stay safe and warm, and then shovels, salt for ice.
And we should mention that, both for your home and your car, especially for your car, I guess, they have small shovels that are compact that you
Yes.
can get specifically for a small location.
Yeah, so that would be great to keep in there, even year round, just to have. And then you want to be thinking, if God forbid the power goes out, you want to make sure you have food on hand that does not need to be prepared. So that way, if there is no power, you will still be able to eat and feed your family.
Bring your pets indoors, because
Yes.
pets suffer as well.
Yeah, so I thought this was very important to add. So according to veterinary experts, that if the temperature drops below 20 degrees, you should be bringing your pets inside. I know some breeds of animals are well adapted to the outdoors, but you need to keep in mind if it's cold for you, it's cold for them as well. And they also said for like puppies, kittens, and short-haired animals, that's for if the temperature drops below 40 degrees, they should be brought inside. If you cannot bring your animals indoors, say you have a pet horse at home, you want to make sure that they...
I don't.
Yeah, you want to make sure that they have a warm shelter and that they
Okay.
have access to unfrozen water.
Very good. Yes, because water freezes, so certainly if their food and drink supply could be at stake because of the cold.
Yeah, so definitely check in on them.
We talked about that compact snow shovel for the car. Let's talk more about preparing your car.
Yeah, so this aspect of preparing your car, this is more actually making sure your car is in good maintenance to withstand the storm. Every year before the winter season hits, you can have your radiator system serviced, or even if you have the ability to check yourself for the antifreeze level just to make sure no more is necessary. I cannot do that myself. My father helps me with that, luckily.
Aren't you lucky?
You want to refill your windshield wiper fluid. And I did, when I was researching, they do have a winter mix that is supposed to help with defrosting.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, so I don't have too much knowledge. I was trying to go through some reviews. Some say it works, some say it doesn't. But I know when I'm on the highway, especially after a storm, the salt is very distracting. So make sure your windshield fluid is at least filled.
Absolutely, because it creates a film
Yes.
that it's very difficult to see through.
Yes, it's very difficult. So that's my number one thing every winter. You want to make sure that you check your tires for the tread. I know a lot of people may have like winter tires that they put on for the season, and you want to make sure there's adequate air pressure in your tires because you would not want to go out in a storm and have a flat tire. And then the last one that my father reminds me every storm is make sure that you keep your gas tank near full prior to extreme cold or a winter storm, just to prevent ice from accumulating in the gas tank and the fuel lines.
I told this to my 17-year-old son, who during I think probably the first snowstorm of this season, back maybe in November, or snow event, he had like less than a quarter of a tank, and I said never let it go that low.
Yes.
Because it's dangerous, clearly.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so how about staying safe during the storm?
Okay, so first off, we have that you want to heat your home safely. So again, if in case that power goes out, you want to make sure you have those extra blankets and winter clothes. If you have a portable space heater, I know at home I have one that plugs in, so it wouldn't really help me, but if you have one that operates on batteries or even a generator, you really want to make sure that you're using it by their guidelines. So whatever product you have, make sure you're reading the instructions. You want to make sure that it has an automatic shut-off, which is good. That way, if like a blanket hits it, it will shut off automatically. A lot of the older generation ones can be a fire hazard.
So with that said, if you have an older one, it's probably time to upgrade.
Yes, I would upgrade it just to be safe. That's also if there's the cord's broken or anything, don't use it, replace it. You want to make sure you're leaving that on the floor. You wouldn't want to put it up on a table in case it fell over.
Because we should mention, not only could you or I potentially knock it over, if you have a pet, the pet could knock it over.
Yes, a pet or a child. Yeah. Definitely don't leave a child unattended around one of those devices. And then also keep it away from curtains or blankets or anything. You want to keep it a good distance so nothing can block it and then cause a fire.
Light your home safely.
Yeah, so
makes a lot of sense, right?
Yes. So I am big with candles. I love candles, which is not great. So especially in a winter storm, you got to think first responders, fire department, they're busy helping people. So you want to make sure you don't light a fire in your home. So rather than lighting candles, the CDC suggests using a flashlight, battery operated, keeping extra batteries in the home. If you do have to use a candle for light, make sure you're not leaving it unattended.
And I think also having a candle placed on maybe a saucer, some kind of plate,
yes,
is better than having it on nothing.
Yes, correct.
Conserve heat. That makes sense as well.
Yes.
All this, we should mention, all this does really make sense when you think about it. But often a lot of people don't.
Yeah, it's the little things, and that's why we just want to come here to remind people. So conserving heat is really, of course, just trying to make sure you're keeping the heat in your home in the areas that you need it. So if you have a bedroom that nobody is using, you can close that door so the heat's not escaping. It's also good to use one of those under door draft stoppers. you don't have one of those, you can roll up towels and put it along the doors just to prevent draft air from coming in.
We talked about sometimes older adults not realizing that it's getting cold and affecting them relatively quickly. Same could be said for infants.
Yeah, so with infants, they can lose body heat more easily than adults. And therefore they should never sleep or be in a room that's too cold. You want to make sure that you're dressing them properly, nice and warm. The CDC was specifying this for infants under 1 year old. If they are sleeping, you want to, again, most parents will know this, but you want to make sure they're not sleeping with any pillows or blankets, anything that they can pull over their face and block their respiratory, because it could be fatal. So they say if your home is cold and you have a young infant, try to find another place to go for the night. Or in an emergency situation, you can try to use your own body heat to warm them. But you also want to keep in mind, if you're asleep, don't sleep with them, because God forbid if you rolled over on them, you want to make sure that infant's sleeping safely.
Absolutely.
And then, and then with the older adults, they tend to make less body heat due to a slower metabolism and decreased physical activity. Therefore, they should also dress warmly, and that's why it's also good for them to have the large thermometer in the house, so they can kind of regularly keep track of what the temperature is in their home to make sure that it's not going too cold.
Right. My mom asked for a larger thermometer. She, being a senior, I suppose, feels better that she can actually read the numbers.
Yes.
And it's important, again, because as you said, both infants and older adults could succumb to extreme cold.
Yes, and if you have elderly families, neighbors, and if they live alone, definitely check in with them. If you are an elder and you're living alone, check in with a neighbor, a family, friend, just so they know you're safe, and if you need help, hopefully they'll be able to help you
So
during
it's
the storm.
right, like a buddy system.
Yeah.
Safety in numbers, right?
Yes.
Keeping a water supply.
Yeah, so that's one thing we kind of take for granted is our water supply, of course. But you want to reduce that risk of the water pipes freezing. You want to leave all your taps on ever so slightly just to keep a continuous drip. Obviously, you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to be flooding your bathrooms. But that's just kind of to keep the water running in your pipes. You want to, of course, regulate the temperature in the house so it's nice and warm. And then also, if you had pipes like in a cabinet, you want to make sure you're opening that cabinet door so the hot air can reach those pipes. And in God forbid your pipes do freeze, the CDC suggests using like electric hair dryer to thaw those pipes.
Not a blowtorch.
Never use fire.
Right.
Yes, that was all capital letters. Do not use a blowtorch. It's a fire risk. And then also they're saying in an emergency situation, if you had no access to water, you can melt snow, but you would want to do that on a stovetop to boil the water first, just to kill some of the bacteria or germs in it. And then also some chemicals can be found in snow, so boiling it and letting it cool prior to drinking would be the best bet.
So even new fallen snow has some potential hazards?
Yes, just in the environment. There's so many toxins in the environment, of course. And that's a last priority. You really want to make sure if a storm's hitting, you have like extra water bottles or a gallon of water, something to use in the meantime.
And of course, for those that might be on a water pump, a well, for example, the pump won't work if the power's out, so you wouldn't be able to get that water.
Yeah, so definitely keep that in mind during a storm. It's always good to stock up on water. As we all know, that's one of the first things that goes before a winter storm. That and bread.
Yeah, absolutely, that's true. Okay, so let's talk about staying safe when you are outdoors.
Yeah, so outdoors, this is very common sense. You want to make sure you're dressing warmly and stay dry. So you want to wear several layers of loose-fitting clothing, including hat, gloves, water-resistant coat and boots, if possible. So just a little bit on that. So the inner layer, you want to make sure that fabric is going to maintain your body heat, but also keep you dry. I know a lot of like Nike, Under Armour, they all have those like tight fit clothing that will like athletes wear
Right.
to regulate your body temperature. So that would be a good thing. I tend to wear that if I'm going out in a snowstorm.
Okay.
The second layer would be your insulation layer. So something like a fleece zip-up or jacket would be good to help maintain that heat as well. And then your outermost layer, you want to make sure that that's water resistant, because if it's snowing or if it turns to rain, you want to make sure that your clothes is not getting soaked. That would then trap in the coldness to your body.
Right, right. Can you have too much on? Can you go outside with too many layers?
So you can definitely overheat if you do way too many layers. So really just listen to your body. If you're feeling way too hot, maybe go in, take a layer off. You would really want to make sure you're listening to your body in that situation.
But don't let that layer get wet.
Yes.
Absolutely
yes.
not. Stay safe during outdoor activities.
Yeah, so this is, I just kind of touched on this one lightly. So I always think it's good if you're planning anything outdoors, whether it's in skiing, hiking, or even shoveling for a long duration of time, let somebody know. Or if you're planning to travel by car, family, friend, neighbor, just so somebody knows to check in on you if, God forbid, you did get stranded, they know to look out. And then also, you would want to, of course, avoid walking on ice. Keep an eye out for black ice. Unfortunately, we see a lot of fall injuries during these seasons, so definitely be oh my God, I can't say that word either.
Vigilant?
Yes,
There we go.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Look out for that. And then also I had, as I've said before, try not to travel when there's low visibility. If you have to, make sure you have your travel kit and your car is in good shape.
And realize that you're traveling not the best conditions, so certainly keep your speed down.
Yes, keep your speed down. I've slid in the snow many times. It's very frightening, so you want to make sure you're going nice and slow.
And we should say, with ice, black ice in general, there really isn't much you can do once you've hit ice. The car is pretty much going to just travel on that ice. I mean, changing direction with the steering wheel isn't going to do much.
And it's also good to keep in mind, especially with big winter storms, a lot of neighbors and people are out shoveling, so it's with the low visibility, you can't always see them.
Snowbanks.
People will be walking in the streets due to the snow, so really drive safely in these conditions.
Okay, so we talked about what to do. Hopefully, this next topic, people won't get there because of what we said.
Yes.
This is now preventing hypothermia.
Yeah, so hypothermia is caused by prolonged exposure to very cold temperatures when your body loses heat faster than it can produce it. If your body temperature is too low, you said this earlier, it can affect an individual's brain, in which it affects their ability to think clearly and even their ability to react. So a lot of times individuals in this state, they could not even have the conscious mind to know what's going on. So it can be very dangerous. This is more likely to happen in very cold temperature, but even if it's cool temperature, about like 40 degrees out, if somebody's outdoors for prolonged time and they're chilled by rain, sweat, or their body is submerged in cold water, it can happen to them as well. And then the signs and symptoms in adults, you may see shivering, exhaustion, confusion, fumbling hands, memory loss, and slurred speech. And then in an infant, you may see that their skin is bright red and cold, and they will also have very low energy. So hypothermia is a medical emergency. You want to make sure you're calling 911 if you discover anybody in the state.
So any of these symptoms you certainly want to treat then as hypothermia.
Yes. And if you don't know, call 911 and have a medical professional come out to assess to see. So if medical emergency is not, obviously it takes a little bit for them to get there, or if you're in a situation where they can't get to you, what you would want to do is get the person to a warm place or shelter. Take their temperature if you are able to. If it's below 95 degrees Fahrenheit, you want to make sure that you're removing the individual's wet clothing. You want to warm the center of their body, so that would include their chest, neck, head, and groin area with like warm blankets. And then if possible, you want to have them drink warm fluids. It's always important, it doesn't say hot, warm.
Right.
Any of this, any cooling, you want to make sure it's warm and not hot. You don't want to expose them to the opposite extreme.
Because then you have a whole bunch of other issues, I would imagine.
And after the temperature increases to a normal temperature again, you want to make sure that you're keeping them in a dry, warm place until medical evaluation is necessary. Even if somebody snaps out of it, they should still go to a hospital to be assessed. And severe hypothermia can lead to unconsciousness, and the person may appear to have no pulse or limited breathing. So in this case, you would want to bring them to a warm area and start CPR and call a medical 911 right away. And it's important to know that hypothermic victims who appear dead can be successfully resuscitated, so don't hesitate to start CPR.
In the last couple of minutes, we do need to talk about frostbite.
Yeah, so lastly we have frostbite, and this is an injury also caused by freezing that leads to loss of feeling and color in the affected areas. These areas can then have permanent damage and even amputation. These areas are also similar to skin cancer, that episode we had done.
Right. Okay.
But it could affect an individual's nose, ears, cheeks, chin, fingers, and toes due to their exposure to the cold. Signs and symptoms include, at first, it can be redness or pain in the area. They may experience white or grayish yellow skin in the area that might feel firm or waxy, and numbness. So it's important to point out that sometimes a person may not even notice. It takes somebody else to be like, your nose is bright red, because it might be numb to them.
Right.
So they're not noticing it's happening. This is also a medical emergency, because the damage, the longer you're exposed, the more damage it's causing. So you would bring them for medical evaluation. If that's not readily accessible, you want to get the person into a warm room as soon as possible. You don't want them to walk on their feet or toes unless absolutely necessary, and you also don't want to massage the areas, because that can cause increased damage. And you want to put those affected areas in warm, not hot water, if that is available, or you could use your own body heat to warm those areas. And then the last thing, it's important to know that you should not use heating pads, heat lamp, fire, or a radiator to warm those extremities. Because of the numbness, you're more prone to burn those areas. So it's really just using body heat or warm water until you get medical help.
Well, very good. A lot of information in this episode. As we close, just go over again where you got this information from, so people might maybe go there themselves.
Yeah, so all of this information and even more, I kind of just recapped a lot of it, is all provided on the CDC website. And I did provide that link for people to access it. And if they have any questions, definitely go to that site for clarification.
Once again, thank you for joining us here at the Quincy Access Television Studios, and we'll have you back in on a different topic.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you at home for watching. Please continue to watch Local Access Television for more locally produced programming.